Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me again this evening. I'd put it out there. Any topics people wanted me to cover, there were for a few suggestions. There's a lot of difference in some of the questions that were being asked. So I thought that this evening I'd do something I haven't done for a long time, and that's just take questions as they come in. No particular topic tonight, just looking at the questions. And it's nice to see there are some questions there already. But I'm just going to go back to some of the questions that were in the post just to see if I could look at them, see if there's anything I could answer. Pardon me. Yeah, still gruff with this throat. One of the questions was asking about how a narcissist programs children against the mother. Well, kids, as we raise kids, kids are going to learn. They're going to learn from their parents. They're going to learn their values. They're going to learn things like that. Um, the environment they're in is going to be pretty much normalized to them. They're going to learn how to behave and so on. That can be difficult if one of the parents is narcissistic, but where the other parent is maybe not narcissistic, what we forget is sometimes they're going to learn from them as well. Now, that's not to say there might not be something genetic as much as there might be something environmental going on. I really don't know. Some people say it's a bit of both. But I think there is hope in the sense that there is enough from the other parent as well. They start to see other things. Where we feel alienated, it can be difficult, especially as the kids grow up. Again, things can be normalized, but I often say that as we if we just try to be the best version of ourselves that we can, we try to be authentic, we try to be genuine, we show love, we show all of those things that we show our kids. Ultimately, it's up to them. I like to think that kids aren't kids forever. So they don't just learn from the other parent, they might learn from other people as well. It doesn't always happen immediately. Sometimes it might not happen at all. It really depends. And I'm not trying to put a downer on anything. Um, but what we can do, as I say, is we try to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Okay. And sometimes what you see is kids do start to come round. Um, there is more on this. There's channels out there that look at things like narcissistic families, narcissistic partners. Jay Reid would be a good example of that, where he talks a lot about families and the family dynamics. So you might get some good information, some good advice from his channel. He would know a lot more when it comes to the family dynamics. As I say, it's like any kind of narcissistic dynamic, or where there's some kind of estrangement. We just try to be authentic and genuine, in the hope that as we start to model what healthy relationships and dynamics look like, that's going to influence the other people. Not necessarily control them and change them as a narcissistic person would try to do, but more influence them when they start to see maybe a better way. Another question came from Carol. Carol Mink was asking about subconscious programs are difficult to extirpate. We believe we're healed and then suddenly we're thrown backwards. Well, by their very nature, a lot of the stuff when it's subconscious, if you will, it's like it's automatic. It's below the surface. It's more like back here rather than in here. In places like in something like therapy, we can learn about our unconscious drivers. I think awareness is a very powerful thing. Whenever we become aware of something, that gives us a choice. Sometimes we could be faced with something, we're going to act in a certain way. We have a choice. We can continue doing what we normally do, but we have a fair idea how it may end up. We could continue to do what we normally do. And who knows, in that situation, it could be the best course of action. But we can also choose something different. And the thing about trying something different is sometimes we have to try different things. They're not always going to work. Maybe not at first, but we learn from what doesn't work every bit as much as we do from what does work. Okay. The more familiar we become as well, they become less automatic. As I say, that awareness can help us with that. What we can learn as well in something in therapy is what our particular triggers or cues are. For instance, every time someone seems upset, we automatically go into rescue mode. It might be because we don't like conflict, we don't like the thought of there being some kind of contention or whatever. We don't like people being upset, so we feel, we believe we have to do something to make things better. Or every time someone raises their voice, we might feel intimidated. We, Floyd, go and lie down. Go lie down. Good boy. Come on. Stay. Stay. Lie down. Stay. Sorry about this. He's been very attention seeking this evening. Stay. Go on. Lie down. Good boy. Lie down. Go on. Have a nap. Stay. Good boy. Professional as always. Yeah. What else I get to? Yeah, we can learn what our particular cues are. For instance, someone gets angry. We might again fear conflict. So what we do is we back down. We try to pacify, or whatever. We learn what the different cues are. We learn what the different triggers are. Once we learn those things, we have something to manage. In some cases, even to disarm. It doesn't necessarily happen straight away, not with the flick of a switch. It can be, as I say, learning different things, different ways of dealing with things, being maybe a little bit more assertive, recognizing that whatever it is not necessarily our responsibility. Okay, we can certainly have compassion, we can sympathize, but it might not necessarily be ours to fix. Okay, so that in and of itself will have so many unconscious things going on. That might take a little while, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, whenever we focus on one area, you will see a knock on effect in other areas as well. And Lady Di, 820, is asking, heard of the narcissist that's called the conversational narcissist? I have heard of the term. What I would say about that is sometimes you will meet someone and they do seem to be quite narcissistic, and every time you're talking to them, they keep bringing the conversation back to being about them. And it's not necessarily, it can be, but not necessarily that it's one-upmanship or they're trying to dominate. Sometimes it could be that they are just desperate for some kind of attention. They're desperate to get their story out there. Who knows? Maybe they're lonely. Other times it might be, yeah, I'm starting this conversation. I'm going to induce a conversation just to get your attention, just to get you talking. Then I'm going to dominate and I'm going to start talking about all the stuff that's interesting to me. Sometimes you'll meet someone like that. As I say, they might just be lonely. Sometimes they are narcissistic and they want to impress you. Sometimes they want to get your sympathy. Sometimes they want to tell you about how amazing they are. They're so generous or whatever. Sometimes you're dealing with someone who might just be a bit of a nuisance. Okay. They're just a bit of a pest. I think if you're talking to someone and as you're talking to them, they keep interrupting you, they talk over the top of you about something completely different, something completely irrelevant. That's an indication they're not actually listening to you. They want to more talk at you rather than with you or to you. Okay. It's a hard one to discern. I think you'd really need to know the person. You'd need to get to know them for a while to get a sense of what they're like. As I say, someone is maybe just wanting your attention. They just want to dominate it. Other times, yeah, it could be they're lonely. Maybe they have no one to talk to. There could be a lot of different things going on. It's not always easy to discern at first. Okay. So they were some of the questions that were up in the post. I'm going to go back to the questions that are in the chat. So I'm going to, let me see, pop that out so that I can read it. So it's a lot bigger. And first question is coming up from Psychic Consultant. My question is, what if the narcissist in your life promises to go to therapy and promises to change? Well, first of all, that would be dependent on whether or not it is narcissism we're talking about. It would also depend on the situation. Sometimes someone might behave in a certain way. They know they've gone too far. There are going to be consequences, and they do become very apologetic. Okay. Like sometimes that can be just get me out of this distress. Okay. When the immediate pressure, the immediate stress starts to dissipate, so does their need for change. Okay. They kind of revert back to type. Other times you might get someone who is aware that what they're doing is not it's not helping them, it's not helping other people. There are going to be consequences. and they might want to go to therapy. They might want to. What is it? Do you want out? Back in a tick. Come on, buddy. Never work with children or animals. It's not what they say. Or deluded middle-aged men like me. Anyway, where to get to? Yeah, there might be a promise of change because they recognize what they're doing is not working. It's going to cost them. They're going to be dumped or whatever. So there might be a promise of change. There might be enough awareness that they want to change. They try it and they might struggle with whatever it is. I think a good indicator is if you, even if you see them struggle and you see them slip up, they're actually owning up to it and they are going back to doing to trying, okay, to try different things. As I say, even if they struggle, if you get a promise to change, and as I say, a few days, maybe a week later, they just revert back to type. That's probably an indicator that their promise to change was just to get them out of that moment's discomfort. Okay. Again, it's a difficult one. It really depends on the person, it depends on the situation. But as I say, I've said it previously in videos, there is a difference between the change in a person and the change in a tactic. And if it's maybe about something they've been doing, something they've been saying, where you see genuine remorse and not just they're offering to buy you something nice or do something nice for you. Okay. There is genuine remorse and regret, and you can see a concerted effort to try to change. I think that would be the difference. Okay, so where we get to next one on my way. What are the stages of why it can be a long process in healing from narc abuse? Everybody's stages are going to be different. And why can it take so long? Again, it maybe depends on the individual. It depends on their social support network. It depends on what support they have. It depends on maybe how long they were in that situation and environment. It might even depend on the um, the kind of abuse that they faced. Sometimes, and I would say this is more kind of covert. You don't necessarily get abuse as such. It's more like neglect. And that can be very hard to make sense of because if you were to try to point out something they didn't actually do anything. They maybe neglected to do things. They neglected to listen to you, to meet your needs, to pay attention to you, to treat you with courtesy, respect, things like that. They were paying more attention to themselves and everybody else. It's very hard to make sense of things when you can't quite put your finger on it because they didn't actually do or say anything bad as such. But what you'd be looking at is a long-term pattern of devaluation, rejection, neglect, and things like that. So it really depends on what someone's been through, what their experience was, as well as their own individual stuff, their own experiences, their support network, whether or not they're having support, and what the stages are. Again, they're going to differ for everybody. I think the first thing that hits people is maybe awareness when they realize something's not right. Because this person is not treating others like that. This person's treating people very decently. They're funny, they're witty, they're kind, they're generous. It's only with me that they're treating me like that. But they might see something on television, see something in a movie, and it looks very familiar because this is exactly what's happening in their life. Or someone might tell them a story about their experience. And again, they're thinking, damn it, this sounds really familiar. I'm going through this. They might even do a search. They do a Google search. They go on YouTube and they type in, why do people do this? And they'll get a video about maybe narcissism or something like that. One way or another, there's some kind of awareness. It's like a wake up call. Okay. And once they get the wake up call, once they maybe start educating themselves on that other person's behavior, whether or not there's some kind of diagnosis or not, The more informed they are, this is where you have to get a balance right, but the more informed they are, the more empowered they might feel. The danger is the more informed they are, the more they start to look at things, the more they start to read into things, the more they start to, it's just they're binge watching video after video, which if that's what you're into, it's not a bad thing, but it's all about the content, whatever it is you're looking at. Where did I get to? Yeah, yeah. So the person becomes aware, but then sometimes I think a stage could be having to face up to it, having to acknowledge it to themselves. There is maybe nothing they can do, nothing they can say. They've tried everything, nothing they can do or say is going to change that other person. So they have to acknowledge that, they have to accept that, but then they start to look at themselves. What needs to change about them? And this is where a good support network or a good therapist can help because they start to look at the things that they need to do. Going back to Carol's question from earlier, they start to look at some of those automatic responses, those unconscious drivers, the way they react to certain stimuli, the way they react to certain behaviors, the way they react when that person or someone like them is around. So they start to build on things like confidence, maybe having a bit more faith in themselves. They start to look at things like resilience, assertiveness, different things like that. They start to do things in their own best interest. Now, it's not that they ever forget what happened. I'm taking it, maybe they're out of that environment. They're not in that person's company anymore. They're not, it's not that they've forgotten, but what they're not necessarily doing is they're not dwelling on it. Okay. They're not ruminating as much. There could be other things in their lives, other relationships. Whenever they think about that person or the things they've been through, they're not necessarily going through every interaction the way they used to, trying to make sense of it. They're actually choosing to. Okay. So it's not so much rumination, it's a thought that's come up. It's like recall with intent. So they may be thinking about it, they have control over what they're thinking about and how they're thinking about it. If they're not paying attention, they might miss some of the things they have been doing, such as they're now doing things in their own best interest. They're now paying attention to the people that are bringing out the best in them, the people that are being nice to them, treating them decently. They're not paying attention to how they've maybe moved along. They might feel as if they haven't moved on, but they have moved forward. And in other ways, the moving on, I believe, tends to catch up. Now, why does it take so long? Come back to the original question. If you were in a situation or an environment with a narcissistic person, the things that happened didn't happen over the course of a weekend necessarily. Okay. They might have happened over weeks, months, sometimes even years. Okay. So it's been, the expression goes, a death by a thousand cuts. Okay. It was a process. It wasn't just one day somebody decided to tell you, this is how I'm going to treat you and this is your life now. No, it was a little piece at a time. And sometimes, particularly in therapy, we look at unpicking that little piece at a time, but also the recurring thread that runs through it all. When you look at the recurring threads and themes, it makes a bit more sense regardless of what was going on. Because we don't necessarily forget, doesn't mean that we haven't healed. Okay. And because we don't always stop feeling a bit of pain, a bit of regret, whatever it is, again, doesn't necessarily mean we haven't healed. I think when we focus a lot on what we've been through, more so than what we're capable of and what we would like and what we would prefer, and the people that are around us at the moment and the situations we're in at the moment, if we lean too much that way, it can feel as if we're still stuck in it. On my way, I know you've watched previous stuff, especially the live streams. If you if you want to go back and revisit some of the stuff about becoming unstuck, things like letting go, things like updating your memory, you might find something useful in there. Just try and some of the things that I was mentioning in there. Okay, so Amanda's asking, hi Darren, please advise. The only advice I ever get is don't ask me for advice. But I'll read the question. Please advise, as aging 69 narc brother across the road, he's moved on purpose, getting to the point to cut him off, though on one level I love him, on another I loathe him. And there is often the bind, especially with its family, especially if it was a partner, a long term partner, a spouse, a husband, wife, whatever. It's very hard to switch off the fact that there is love or there was love at one point. There is still some kind of connection. Now, I can't advise you what to do, but what I will ask you to think about is what is it you want to do? What is it you need to do? What would your preferred outcome be? Bearing in mind, we can't change other people. We most we can do is influence them, encourage them, things like that, but we can't actually change them. Is it just about cutting them off, never seeing them again? That's entirely up to you. That is going to have its cost. That will have its consequences. Is it about just keeping things as they are, keep running after them, doing whatever it is you have been doing for them? Again, that's going to have its consequences. Is it about maybe having managed contact? In which case, you can be courteous, polite, pleasant. You can still show a level of love and connection, but you're a bit more boundaried and a bit more assertive. Okay, you're not going to tolerate whatever it is he's been doing. Again, that's going to have consequences. Sometimes we are faced with difficult decisions. Regardless of what we do, there are going to be maybe some kind of consequences. Some could be painful, some could actually be positive. I think sometimes the power we have is to choose our consequences. Even in the short term, they might be painful. In the longer term, we might benefit from them. So think about what it is you want to do, what it is you need to do, and then maybe think about how do you go about doing that. And that would be something to maybe explore with a therapist, how you maybe go, why it's important to you, and why or how you think you could go about doing it. So let me see. Flying Free says, no question. Just want to say thank you. Oh, this is lovely. I don't often get praise like this. I like this. My ego's going to flex now. Hold on, everyone. I just want to say thank you. You're a delight and a joy to listen to. Thank you for all you've taught in your channel. You really are a blessing to me. Flying Free, I would just hand that right back to you and say you're actually a blessing to me. The fact that anybody, people find this stuff useful is the important thing to me. So I really appreciate that. Okay. Now, Daz is asking. Hi Darren, a question. Can PTSD look like narcissism? Constant gaslighting, false accusations, controlling, manipulative, very jealous, and devaluing behavior, etc. But they claim it's PTSD. Well, first of all, post traumatic stress disorder is a clinical diagnosis. Okay. We can have traits of post traumatic stress. We could be going through a situation of traumatic stress. When it becomes a disorder, the clue is in the word disorder. It's the impact that's having on someone's day to day functioning, their relationship with themselves and with other people. But it is a clinical diagnosis, albeit lots of people diagnose themselves and each other these days. Um, Best leave that to the professionals. I can't diagnose anybody. Some people might have very strong traits, and some people, I'm not saying this person doesn't have traumatic stress disorder. They might have, I have no idea. What I would say is sometimes you might get reactions to a lot of safety seeking behaviors. People can be very defensive, they can be avoidant. There can be a lot of heightened anxiety in different situations. I think there's something maybe uncomfortable, definitely unhealthy. If someone, regardless of what's going on with them, they are, if you will, they're making you responsible for managing their anxiety and their stress. That's when it's not so healthy. Yes, we can do certain things. We don't want to hurt someone who's already hurting. We don't want to make things worse for them. And we certainly don't want to deliberately set out to do something that's going to cause them distress. But you mentioned things like very jealous. Okay. This is the thing about jealousy. Whenever jealousy becomes controlling, it's like there's a lot of accusations that you've been talking to this person, or you're thinking about that person, or this person of the opposite sex or same sex, I suppose it depends. But this person has just walked into your field of vision, and therefore you're thinking about them. You know, when we hear things like that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to prove our innocence, and we're trying to give some kind of reassurance. Now, the thing is, when people behave like that, that reassurance is very short lived, because then it'll move on to something else, and we're constantly trying to explain ourselves. It's like you're accused of something and you have to prove your innocence. How do you prove what you weren't thinking about? How can you prove what you were doing those extra 2 minutes in the bathroom? Whatever it is, even not going out with friends, or not taking that promotion, or not going to visit your mum, or whatever it is, because that's going to bring up too much anxiety. I think you're not really helping anybody whenever we start to do that. If it is genuine trauma and things like that, it's something that person needs to work on with their therapist. Okay. They need to get some kind of help and support for that. Expecting you to wrap them in cotton wool and to be a certain thing, you, it's very controlling, is the way I would put it. You mentioned things like gaslighting, false accusations, controlling, manipulative. What you described there does not sound like PTSD. As I say, with PTSD, you see a lot of safety seeking behavior, maybe avoidant behaviors. You can see anger sometimes, you will see emotional dysregulation. The difference is there can be regret, embarrassment, shame, and there can be attempts to maybe try things differently. I once asked a forensic psychiatrist how, when he's diagnosing people, how is it, how do you separate what could be borderline personality and complex trauma? Because sometimes the symptoms and behaviors look exactly the same. So I asked him, how is that done? How do you differentiate that? How do you do that? And his answer was probably the most honest answer I've ever heard from a psychiatrist. He said, it's usually done very badly. Okay. And that was his professional experience. Because sometimes the behaviors can look very much the same. But I think there is a huge difference. Sometimes when someone is struggling with something like trauma, they are aware of their trauma. They might also be aware of what that is causing to other people, how their behavior could be hurting other people. Where there, I'm not saying it's not there, but even when there are other things comorbid, it's almost like, as I said, the world has to change in order to fix me, to suit me. Okay. So if if a forensic psychiatrist says it's difficult sometimes to separate something like borderline with CPTSD, it's not to say that narcissistic people don't have trauma as well. Some of them do. But that does not take away their responsibility for their own actions and how they behave. If there's gaslighting, okay, which is much more than lying, okay, whenever we're talking about gaslighting, we're talking about rewriting reality, okay, rewriting your, not just their own, but rewriting your narrative. Things like that didn't happen. And if it did happen, it wasn't that bad, or it's your fault or whatever. You're remembering that wrong. And, sure, actually, it's just come into my head something to think about. Sometimes you find yourself being accused of things, not that you've actually done anything. You're accused of thinking something, or you're accused of having particular motives. Okay. I don't think that's necessarily a sign of trauma, though it could well be, but I don't think that's necessarily a sign of trauma. I think that's maybe other stuff going on. It is very controlling stuff. It's difficult, but what I would say is, going back to where I started, PTSD is a clinical diagnosis. If this person claims to have it, do they actually have a diagnosis? Are they getting treatment for it? Okay. Are they attending therapy and things like that? Because if they're just living as they live, but not doing anything about it, that's not going to go well for themselves or for the people around them. If it is just claiming that they have some kind of trauma in order to give them a get out of jail free card, that's something different. Like I say, without knowing the person, without knowing the situation, they're just my thoughts on it. Okay. Carl says, so glad to be narc free for over 2 years. That's interesting question. It was an interesting question. I hope I answered it. Carl asks, what does Freud think of my day job? He doesn't mind my day job if I'm working from home, because some days I work from home. I see people over Zoom and things like that. So he doesn't mind that. Sometimes he's up here and he's actually pretty good during the day. He'll just lounge about and he won't make a nuisance of himself. Other times, especially over the summer, I leave the back door open, so he just runs in and about the garden and he does whatever he wants. He has to run over the place. If I'm out in my practice, if I'm out seeing people face to face, what he gets up to in the house by himself, I've really no idea. Um, I don't know. He could be watching television for all I know. That's what he wants. But he has a kitchen dining area is quite big, so he has plenty of room. His bed's in it, his toys is in it, and yeah, he's got plenty of room. I've never actually asked him what he thought of my day job. Interesting question. Wonder if he'll answer or if he'll think I'm offering him food or for a walk or something. Oh, Amanda, I'm fluctuating in volume. There could be something up. There's something up with my software. I've been trying with my mic. I hope that you are hearing me okay. I have no idea why it's doing this. And I know that if I unplug it, you're not going to hear me at all. That's the nature of this. Let me see. Oh, it's still fading in and out. Wobbly audio. Right. Well, let me see if I can do something about that. Let me see. I'm going to knock that off. Okay, everybody. Can you still hear me? Because I've just knocked that off. Knocked the software off that applies for it. So, yeah, it's better. Good stuff. Okay. Back to my questions. This is the thing. See, in the analog age, we didn't have any of this crap. You plugged something in and it worked. Everything's digital now, and the bloody world is going to pot. Let's go back to the analog age. That's what I say. Where did I get to? That's my rant over. Okay. Let me see. Giga Garcia is saying, Jerry Wise for resources on family narcissism dynamics. Thank you for suggesting that, Jerry Wise. I've only seen 1 or 2 videos of Jerry, so can't really give an opinion on his stuff. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anybody who has any suggestions for resources for people, certainly flood the chat with it, even the comment section, put them out there. Sometimes YouTube won't let you put a link to something because I think it's spam. If you can't do that, then just write down the name of it. Give people the benefit of the doubt. They'll know how to search for it. They'll be able to find it. If you can't put the link, put the name of what it is, the video, the person, whatever it is, and let people find it. Share as many resources as you can, as you've got. So where do we get to? Laura is saying Patrick Trahan. Yep, another one. Yep, let me see. Iris is asking, do you think there is a preternatural, supernatural angle to NPD in particular? Seemed to be ex-husband out of the blue said he wanted me to go to hell and did things for himself and not God. Um, some people would say, I mean, I've seen videos up and they're saying about narcissism being demonic. Well, let's imagine we live in a world where, let's imagine angels and demons are real. I wouldn't necessarily say they are demon possessed or whatever, if you want to put it that way. I would say they would be more demon influenced. That's a better way of putting it. Because what you're looking at is a spectrum. There's the low level person who just maybe might be a bit of a pest, who just wants your attention and wants to be loved and wants to be special, all the way up to the real dark personality types where you see things like psychopathy and so on being comorbid. Um, I don't know. It's the thing. I'm always in two minds about the supernatural. Every time I think I do believe in it, I read something that convinces me it's not, and then I will read something that convinces me there could well be something in it. So um, I'm probably not the right person to talk to when it comes to supernatural things. I think that there are some people who, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this. I think there's a difference between religion and faith. Okay. Regardless of what the religion is, by the way, it doesn't matter what the religion is. But a religion, I believe, is something you do. Okay. It's like you get up to go to work religiously, you brush your teeth religiously. So it's something you do. A faith is something different. A faith is a belief that you have in a superior being, your relationship with that superior being. And people who have a faith tend to behave very differently from people who are just religious. Um, there's probably a whole live stream on that as well. And I don't want to get into the realms of sounding like Jordan Peterson. When you learn something new, a stupid part of you dies. I don't really want to sound like him. But I think there is a big difference. The people with a faith live a certain way and behave a certain way. People with a religion tend to do things. And whatever it is they do, they claim to have some kind of moral high ground for doing it. I don't want to insult anyone's faith or religion, by the way, but they're just my thoughts. Where do we get to? Questions. Alison says, I carry a stone in my pocket sometimes to remind me to take a deep breath before I speak if I face conflict. Alison, that's interesting. I heard something similar to that, but it must be about 10 years ago. Someone said about doing the same thing. That's really interesting. About it's a little grounding thing. It's something that reminds you. Yeah, it's something. Yeah, it brings you back into the present, so you can gather your thoughts and so on. Maybe calm yourself down a little before you respond, as opposed to react. Another one would have been people would have been using little elastic bands or something on their wrists. There were different things like that, little things that people found useful. I think that's a good idea. Let me see. Let me see, where did I get to? Questions. This has jumped. I have to go back to where I was. Beverly Freud egos on toast. Freud actually had scrambled egg on toast for his breakfast. Well, I want to say that he had half of mine. Yeah. Okay, Ice is asking, how do I stop to think the situation with my father, narcissist, with whom I have no contact? There's always a comeback of his flying monkeys. It's like a cycle. Always going guilt or doubt. Again, it's really going to depend on the situation and the people that are there. Those flying monkeys, are they agents? Are they supporting him? And are they as just behaving just like him? Are they naive? Are they frightened of him? Really have a look at what their motives might be. Having a healthy level of self-doubt isn't necessarily a bad thing, in the sense that we can be open to new information. We might learn something new, but not to the point where we're constantly doubting ourselves. Okay. If you've gone no contact with someone, I'm going to hazard a guess that didn't come out of nowhere. That probably took a lot of thought. It probably took a lot of courage as well. So if you did that for a reason, pay attention to what that reason was. And the people who might be coming to you looking for information or saying things to you, again, you don't necessarily know what their motives are. But just try to stay grounded in reality. Try to remember, if you're out of that situation and you do have people around you that are treating you decently and they're supporting you, try to remember those things, those people, those interactions. Because our default is always quite often to go to the negative and the pain. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. At the end of this, I'm going to talk you through a little exercise, all of you, that you can try to draw on your own inner resources. Okay. Sometimes it gives you the boost, the energy, whatever it is, to face whatever it is you're about to face. Okay. If I forget, somebody mention it in the chat so that I talk you through it, because my mind does wander. But if you bear with us towards the end, I will talk you through that. Hopefully you'll find it helpful. What, Mirax Legend, why do Scorpio people always seek control over others? LOL. Well, you've added an LOL. Okay, it's a bit of humor. I have no idea. I know nothing about the what is it, star signs and stuff like that. I only found what star sign I was about 2 years ago. Can't even remember what it is now. It'll come to me. But here's the thing about Scorpio. My thoughts on Scorpio would be a Wanderer class planet hopper, a Mark II, and it was in the final season of Blake 7. Fine looking little ship. Interior looked awful, looked like a BBC studio. But the exterior, the model, very, very fine looking model. Anyway. Laura's asking, where is somewhere you'd like to travel to and why? Laura, that's an interesting question. I haven't really traveled a lot. It's only in the past few years I've went to places. I've been to Rome, I've been to Paris, I went to Portugal. I've been to Jersey, which I really like Jersey. Jersey's a lovely place, really, really nice. Been throughout Ireland, north and south, been through a lot of places in the UK. I'm not a big traveler. If there was anywhere that I could go, anywhere money was no problem and I could stay as long as I want, I wouldn't have to worry about, getting home, getting there and getting home again. What I would like to see are the South American pyramids, more so than the Egyptian ones. I think the Egyptian ones are interesting, but I would really like to see the the Aztecs, the Incas, and things like that. I don't know what it is, but even as a kid, I've been fascinated. I remember getting a book when I think I was still in primary school, and this is shows you how long. This was back in the days when kids were looking at books and it was telling you things like about human sacrifice. Not scary to a kid, like, but it always fascinated me. And then you see, sometimes you see movies or TV shows or something, and you will see the Incas, the Aztecs, and so on, and how they live. I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think there's something really fascinating about that culture way back then, how they lived, the way they believed, and so on. So if I could go anywhere, that's a place I would like to go. I'd like to go and see those pyramids. I'd like to see those places. Maybe that's something for me to unpack in my own therapy. What is it about that I would be interested in? Where do we get to? Adam is asking why we care too much about other people than ourselves. Let me put this into a context for you. sometimes we will care about others more than ourselves. We will care about the people we love, sometimes more than we care about ourselves. We care about children, not just our own children, any child, the vulnerable. I think it's human nature. We care. We don't necessarily want to see harm to anybody. We're compassionate. We're empathic. There's a lot of different stuff going on. We will sacrifice for the people that we care about. We'll give something up so that they can have something. Um, Parents sacrifice a lot for their children. Kids don't often know it until they grow up. I think what hurts, I think it's in our human nature, but what hurts is whenever we meet someone who expects that sacrifice and expects us to care. Again, it's their entitlement because they're special, and if you want to be part of my life, you have to be like this, whatever, but they give nothing back. I think when it's reciprocal, that's when it's different. And we don't sacrifice everything. We do still say no. We do still have to have boundaries. And there are some things we're going to say no to our kids about. We're going to say no to, friends asking for more money so they can go and bet on a horse or something. We're going to say no because I think we learn as well, we learn to care about the difference between caring about and caring for sometimes. Um, Sometimes we can care too much in the sense that, well, I'll look at your question the way you phrased it, care too much for other people rather than ourselves. There could be a codependency there. There could be people pleasing. There could be a learned fawning response to other people. We find it hard to say no. It's Where would you like to begin? There are a lot of different reasons why we can be like that, but they're just some of them. Phil's asking, is Brad a simp? I have no idea who Brad is or what you mean by a simp, so I can't answer that. I'm sorry. Where do you get to? Next question. Freud has a separation problem. Actually, he does. He sits and whimpers at the door sometimes. He gets quite anxious. But I think does he get anxious or is he just expecting something from me? Yeah, I think because he will only do it at certain times. He'll do it coming up to walk time. I haven't taken him out for his walk yet. He'll start to get very anxious because I haven't taken him yet. And he runs back and forward to the door. He runs to the door and back and looks at me and then to the door and then back and looks at me. And he's whimpering as he does it. So he knows something's coming up or he's expecting something. There we go. Matt Malley asks, is there any real treatment for vulnerable narcissism? It depends on the person. It depends where they are on the spectrum. It really depends. It's like anything. It's like anybody. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be anxiety, could be work-related stress, could be relationship problems. The person has to recognize, be honest with themselves, that what they're experiencing, what they're going through is hurting themselves. They're hurting themselves, but they might be hurting other people as well. There would have to be intent to change. There would have to be a need for change. Sometimes you might point out someone's behavior and they might get it, but they'll reject it because they think they're entitled to behave any way they like. Sometimes they will deny it. Sometimes they will go into therapy because, as I mentioned earlier, there could be some kind of crisis. So they're desperate. This person's going to dump me. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get whatever. So there is some kind of crisis. So they might go to coaching. They might go to therapy. They might do something. But like I say, if it's something like narcissism, and if it's really deeply ingrained, and even to the point when we get to personality disorder, once that immediate crisis has passed, there's no sense of urgency anymore. It's like they've got away with it, so they can just go back to doing what they're doing. They revert back to type. But if someone does want to change, again, it's going to take being honest, not just with themselves, but honest with their therapist as well. okay, then that's when the real work can begin. And it might be a journey, it might be a process. They might trip up, they might slip up, they might do things like that. But the important thing is there's consistent efforts to try. Um, so it really does depend on the person. Um, so where do we get to? Let me see. He says, narcs feeling evil and expressing it verbally can be a sign of psychosis. It could be a sign of a lot of things. It could be a sign of a lack of awareness. It could be actually, it could be a sign of superiority. They believe that the only way to feel important and powerful is to feel more important and powerful than other people, to maybe threaten them or intimidate them, to get one over on them, to dominate them. So there'd be a lot of different things going on. Where do we get to? I guess it's a question. I hope I can pronounce this right. Oh, parallel artist, I hope. Parallel artist, yes, I think that was it. You can love and have angry at somebody, like even mega angry, depending on what happened. But you can you love and hate someone to the point of willfully physically harming the person? Physically, physical harm, physical abuse, and love. My immediate question is, how exactly do they go in the same sentence together? Okay. Someone can lose their temper. They raise their voice. Sometimes they might break something. They might slam a door. You can do things like that. That's frustration and anger and rage and things like that. I don't think there's any justification for any kind of physical attack on anybody. Okay, I can't say any more than that. Because I don't think there's any more I could say. Doesn't matter what someone says. Doesn't matter how they feel. Doesn't matter what they claim. It doesn't matter what's even going on deep inside them. Regardless of their feelings towards someone, physical attacks, whether that's on the person, whether that's on their property, whether that's on the people that they care about, that doesn't sound like love to me. Okay. There's no justification for it. Let me see. Mere X Legend is asking, how do I reclaim my sense of self when a narcissist has been undermining it for a period of time? You again think about what I was saying earlier. A good place to start is getting some kind of help, some kind of therapy. Reclaiming yourself. That's an interesting question. What we do is we start to do things in our own best interest. We start to pay attention to the things that we like, the things that we need, the things that we want. We start to pay attention to the people that treat us decently, even if that's just a shop assistant, even if that's just the person serving you your coffee in a cafe. Doesn't matter who it is. We start to pay attention to what it feels like to be treated decently. We can, in small little measured ways, we start to take risks. We start to do things that we would like. We give ourselves permission to mess up. Okay, we give ourselves permission to succeed. We learn to say no, not no to every single thing, but we learn to say no whenever we want to say no, whenever we need to say no. There isn't really a clear defined path, if you know what I mean. But reclaiming your sense of self, there are so many different aspects to your sense of self. You learn to trust yourself again, which is something I think it was last week, it might have been the week before. You start to learn to trust yourself, your own instincts. You pay attention to your gut feeling. Don't let it dictate what you do next, but you pay attention to it. Okay. You start to learn about those cues and those triggers. You start to learn about your thinking habits, your patterns, things like catastrophic thinking, all or nothing thinking, assuming the worst, predicting the future, mind reading, all of this safety seeking stuff that we start to do. Best place to do it is definitely in therapy, I would say. Learning to unpick some of that negative energy that was poured into you over perhaps a long period of time. Getting back your sense of self, it's being authentic. Maybe it's a good way of putting it. We start to become authentic again. We stop trying to be a version of ourselves that other people are going to approve of. The fear of being rejected, the fear of being abandoned, and things like that. We try to be authentic, and we give people permission to like us, even to disagree with us, whatever it is. We try to be authentic and genuine, but with ourselves as much as with other people. Okay. Again, I think it was last time. If not, if you go through previous live streams, you will find stuff on boundaries. You will find stuff on keeping a foot in reality, challenging those negative critic vibes and voices that we hear that tell us we're no good. There's just a few tips and things, a few ideas, but a good place would be to maybe a good place to start would be to see a therapist. If you're finding it hard to get yourself back, even to recognize yourself, start ruling out who you aren't. Okay, I always say looking at things the opposite way around can make sense. If you don't know what to do, what is it you don't want to do? What is it you don't need? If you are struggling to make a decision, it's not always because you want to make the right choice. It's because you fear making the wrong one. Okay. So you start looking at things the opposite way around that can help. If you're not sure who you are and how to get your sense of self back, start ruling out who you're not. Okay. What is authentic? What is inauthentic about you? What is the version of you that someone tried to turn you into? Did they try to turn you into their servant? Did they try to turn you into their little cult follower? Did they try to turn you into someone who worships them? Did they try to make you their bank machine they just went to for money or whatever it was? Did they try to turn you into a doormat? Start ruling out who you're not. Okay. I think sometimes that can be helpful. Let me see, where did I get to? Oh, it's just jumped. Right. I have to get back to the beginning. Oh, is my voice still not clear? Sorry. I thought I'd fixed that on the mic. Is it still going in and out? This should have been fixed. I'm sorry about this. Do you know what? I'll maybe do as much as I can. Oh. Okay. Again, questions on, if you have a question mark, it's going to be easier for me to find, because other than that, this is jumping all over the shop. This is jumping all over the shop. Right, okay, got back now. Dr. Suzanne is saying, I dropped my codependency. My life changed miraculously. Lost friends, but I'm happier now. Yeah, that sometimes can happen. Sometimes when we start to find ourselves, we start to move forward. We start to lose things. We might start to lose people. Well, that's a good thing or bad thing. It really depends on the person. You might lose people along the way when you start to become more authentic and you do things in your own best interest. You become more confident, you start to move forward and things like that. But what you might find as well is you start to find other people who don't necessarily want you for what they can get from you. Okay, for what you can do for them. Okay, they start to appreciate you as a person. They start to like you, and sometimes they're the people that are good to have around you. Okay, where do we get to? Let me see. on my way. Well, it's nice you were here. I'll see you next week on my way. Yeah. Where we go? Oh, it is good. It is good. Voice is fine. Sorry, I just saw something that was. What's my favorite comfort food? Um, my secret shame. I do eat a lot of comfort food. I like Mars bars. Okay, I like chocolate in general, but I like Mars bars in particular. If anybody doesn't know what a Mars bar is, just a little bar of chocolate you get here in the UK. It's got like chewy nugget and caramel in it, and it's covered in the most amazing chocolate. It's really nice chocolate. I like it for different reasons. First of all, it's very sweet, and I do have something of a sweet tooth. Um, but also, I have a memory of being very young, my brother and me being very, very young. My dad, the only sweet thing I ever really saw him eat were Mars bars. And it wasn't even all the time, it was just once in a while. But I have a very, very vague kind of memory of being really small. I'm sitting on one knee and my brother's sitting on the other knee, and he has a Mars bar and he's trying to break it into three pieces for us, and it's just a little image that I have. It's a memory. But yeah, I've liked Mars bars. I always have. I don't really know where that come from, other than maybe that memory of sitting on my dad's knee. But I still like a Mars bar. I buy Mars bars. I buy packets of them. They just sit in the kitchen, and every now and again, during my tea break time, I will go pour myself a coffee or tea, depending on what I'm in the mood for. I'll have a Mars bar with it, and that's my treat. Well, it's not really a treat because I have one pretty much every day. But but I like Mars bars. I think that's a comfort for me. Maybe is it familiar or is it comfort? I like Mars bars anyway. Uh, where did we get to? Oh yeah, that was my comfort food. Uh, Amanda's asking, when the brother is bristling with rage on your property, what's the best response? I can't tell you the best response. Again, I don't know the situation and I don't know what he's like with rage. Um, I always say proceed with caution, because you don't necessarily know. You know your brother. You've known him your whole life, I'm guessing. Um, Sometimes you'll see someone just have a tantrum. They'll fold their arms and stick their lip out and call you names. You're so damned unfair. Sometimes people can become explosive. So it really depends. If it is rage, it's aggression, and you're really not sure, I think sometimes just try to get out of the situation if you can. Okay, it's removing yourself. Maybe I'm not saying that's the best response. For me, maybe I'd say it's the safest one, but it really depends on the person. Um, okay, I have a question on my marriage above. It's a longer one. Oh, I might have missed your question. See if I can find it. If I have to scroll back. Let me see. Again, you want some advice on your marriage? Again, I can't. The only advice I give is please don't ask me for advice. I don't know specific situations. Even my clients, I don't give particular advice when I'm counseling. Wife has a dismissive avoidant attachment. I'm anxious attachment. I'm aim to bring space, but then she felt abandoned and she also pushed me out. Prava, if you want information on attachment styles, if you look at Dr. Ruth Ann Harper, if you go on her channel, she's done quite a bit on. She would know a lot more about attachment styles than I would. I'm familiar with them, but she has talked about them in depth, different attachment styles and how they turn up in relationships. I think she also gives a little bit of advice and so on. If you have a look on her channel, Dr. Ruth Ann Harper, she's got some really good content, a lot of different stuff. But she, as I say, she talks about different attachment styles and sometimes what they're like in relationships, and how they sometimes interact with each other as well. Pardon me. She could give you I think she's still doing live streams. If not, I'm sure you could ask a question on her channel. She'll get back to you. She's pretty good that way. Should do a video or something on it, or she might answer it. But she would have a lot of information, a lot more in-depth knowledge on attachment styles than I would. So I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive answer, given the nature of your question. But if you have a look at her, she might be able to help. Deep fried Mars bars, mudlark and marionette. I have heard about that, and I think that is an abomination, absolute abomination. However, if I ever had the opportunity, I'd probably try one. Okay. Um, okay, where we get to Knitspur, double deckers are the only chocolate bar that have improved since I was a kid. They're incredible now, so naturally I have to stay away from them mostly. I think you're onto something there. The double deckers today are nicer than they used to be. Sometimes they change something, and you wonder why they changed it because it's worse. Why would you do that? It was fine. But double deckers are the exception. They are nicer than they used to be. No, Prava, I didn't skip your question. I've just answered it. Okay, as best I could. Let me see. Amanda's saying, the point is I will not leave my own property. Okay, that's a fair point. In which case, what you might want to do is you might want to ask for specific advice from how to maybe stop him entering or whatever. You might need to get proper advice that way, as opposed to how to handle it. Where do we get to? Okay, I think I've pretty much come to the end. So I did promise I was going to talk you through an exercise. So, I'll pick up this one last question, and then I'll do the exercise with you, and I hope you find it helpful. Do I have an opinion on an age gap relationships, especially when the woman is the younger one and the age gap is 20 plus? It's the thing about age gaps, because I've known people who have been in and still are in relationships where there is an age gap, and they're both perfectly fine. They're both perfectly happy. They have been together for several years. So I'm not always saying it's a bad thing. Again, I don't think it's a one size fits all. Some people do fall in love and it works fine for them, and they're happy with the age gap. And that goes both ways. Sometimes the bloke's older and she's younger. Sometimes it's the opposite way around. He's younger, she's a bit older. If they love each other, they love each other. Other times, I really don't know what's going on there. It really depends, I guess. Each to their own. Not very clear on that question. Maybe it's because I know people so that are in those relationships. But yeah, I wanted to talk you through an exercise from one of the questions earlier. And it's about looking at your own inner resources, because a lot of time whenever we're triggered or there's a particular external cue and we find ourselves acting in a certain way, sometimes it can feel as if we're right back in our previous hurtful situation, or yesterday's threat is present today and we're going through the same thing. A lot of this can be unconscious. We might fear that the other person is more powerful somehow. They're going to reject us, or maybe they're much more important than us. Their feelings matter more than ours. It could be a lot of different things. All of us have inner resources, okay? That would actually be one of them. And it can be a useful one in the sense that it could keep us safe. It would stop us doing something silly. But we also have experiences. I like to call this being awesome, because awesome is a great word. It covers everything. There have been moments in our lives when we have been absolutely awesome. Okay. There were times we were the funniest person in the room. We were the smartest person in the room. There were times we were the sexiest person in the room. There were times when we were admired. There's times when we accomplished, we achieved. There's times we got that email or that letter saying, congratulations, would like to offer you the post, the job that you applied for. We've had someone say, congratulations, you passed your driving test or whatever. We've had that moment when someone that we thought was drop dead gorgeous has offered to buy us a drink, or maybe take us out, or they asked us out on a date or whatever, or they started talking to us and wanted to learn about us. There have been moments in our lives, all of us have them, when we felt really good, we felt really powerful, we felt really important, we felt a sense of accomplishment, I felt a sense of pride in ourselves. And that could be anything. But what we typically do is we will look at what happened before it, because it might have been really difficult, okay? We will look at what happened afterwards, because it might not have went the way we hoped. It might have turned out to be a bad job. We weren't happy there. It might have turned out that the person that asked us out was a bit of a muppet. It could have been anything. We passed our test, but it took us so many lessons. It cost us a fortune. We failed our test 3 times before we passed it. And then after that, we had to worry about car insurance and buying cars and stuff. One way or another, that's what we tend to do. But when you look at just that moment when you accomplished, you achieved, you won, whatever it was. So I'm just going to ask you, just for a moment, just to get comfortable, okay? We're not meditating. You don't need to take your shoes off and light candles. I just want you to get as comfortable as you want to be, okay? I'd like you to think about one of those moments. That moment you felt good. That moment you felt proud of yourself. That moment you achieved something. That moment when someone praised you, really thanked you, whatever it was. Just go into one of those moments. Don't think about what happened before. Don't think about what happened after. Just sit with that for a moment. That moment when you felt really good. And as you're doing it, don't force anything. Just try to notice anything that you might start to feel different, even physically. Anything that you might begin to feel differently. As I say, that moment when you were absolutely awesome. Doesn't have to be better, doesn't have to be worse. It's just something different that you might feel physically when you start to think of that moment. That moment someone said, "Congratulations, you've passed your test. Congratulations, would like to offer you the job. What you did was really amazing. I really appreciate that. You played an absolute blinder there. You saved us all. You look really good in that. I really like the way you can do whatever it is." You pay attention to those, and as you start to think about it and you sit in that moment, as I say, you pay attention to what might begin to feel differently. Sometimes some people might feel a little lighter. Sometimes they might be sitting up a little straighter. Sometimes they've stopped breathing from their chest, so they're now breathing from their diaphragm. Sometimes they might start to feel a little more confident, a little more energized. One way or another, when you draw on just one of those moments, sometimes that could be all you need to help you get through what it is you're about to do, okay? As I say, we often lean on the negative experiences as if they dictate everything. Not necessarily. As I say, we have those positive experiences too, okay? So just before I go, I'm going to have a look to see if anybody found that helpful. That helps. Thank you, Darren, about the successful moment. Thank you, Matt. Glad you found it. Flying Free says, body relaxed, breathing got easier. Good to know. Very happy. Mondays is late, but right on time, apparently. Well, it's good if you got the exercise and good. Siobhan says, probably need more moments like that because I can't think of many. Well, this is the thing. How many do we need? We have them. There have been moments throughout our lives. It doesn't have to have been during the week. It could have been 10 years ago. It could have been when we were at school. Doesn't matter what it was. We all have those moments, and every now and again they'll pop up. Sometimes there is that part of us that will filter them out, but they are there. Okay. Okay, people seem to find that really helpful. Carol says her chest opens. That's good. Yeah. I think, yeah, whenever we start to breathe a bit deeper, we start to feel our lungs expand as well. We're breathing from our diaphragm. And do you ever notice in that moment when you take that deep breath, just how refreshed you feel just in that moment as you're about to breathe out again? Record Hound says, I've done a couple of live streams playing records and got that feeling. Yeah, it's a great feeling. Yeah, it's good whenever we start to draw. When you have that experience, keep it. Hold on to it because you never know when you're going to need it. Okay? Draw on those things. Okay. Yeah. SH says I'll have to remember that. Yeah, keep that exercise. Use it whenever you want. Okay. Sometimes it'll only take you a minute, maybe two at the most. And it'll give you what you need sometimes to help you face whatever it is you're about to face. Sometimes it'll help make things maybe just that little bit easier. Okay, well, that's me for this evening. And let me see, I'm just going to close that box. So that's me for this evening. And videos coming out is going to be from, it was something that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago in the live stream, looking at how this is narcissistic people, but not just narcissistic people, specifically narcissistic people, but some people can do this. Looking at how when you're in some kind of interaction with them, you're in some kind of relationship, some kind of dynamic, even if it's in the workplace, in the family, how on one hand they infantilize you because they know better than you. They, they're calling the shots. They know better than you. That you shouldn't be making decisions without checking with them first. So there's, they're infantilizing you. They're trying to run your life because you don't know how to do it, or whatever. But at the same time, this is the strange dichotomy, the strange thing that goes on. At the same time, they're parentifying you. They make you the adult in the relationship. They make you their parent. Okay, it's up to you to keep them safe. It's up to you to keep them safe from the world. It's up to you to give them what they want. It's up to you to manage their triggers for them. It's up to you to stop them getting upset. Okay, so there's those two things going on at the same time, which is one of the things that can actually drive us crazy trying to figure it out. So on one hand, you're infantilized. You're treated like a child because they know best, but then you're also expected to be the parent who protects and nurtures at the same time. So I can't remember who it was. I would give them a shout out, but it was someone who mentioned that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I thought that was a really interesting idea to look into. So I've had a wee bit. I can give my own ideas, but I had a look at what the research says, and that's what I will be putting out. That should be going out either hopefully tomorrow. It's supposed to be a Monday, but this summer I've got into a really bad habit. If it's not out tomorrow, it'll definitely be Tuesday, but hopefully it'll be tomorrow. So keep an eye out for it. And thanks for joining me, everyone. I hope I was able to answer questions as much as I can. I say I can't give specific advice, but I hope I could answer them as much as I could. So everybody, look after yourselves, take care, and I will be back, as I say, tomorrow with a video. I'm going to be chopping up. I've started doing it as well. I've started chopping up these live streams into condensed little parts with information if you want to go back and revisit them, because sometimes that's going to be easier than having to wade through about an hour and a half of me waffling. So I hope you find those things helpful. You'll find it in the little playlist highlights from live streams. So I'm going to be doing more of that as well. So, very happy Mondays. Thank you very much. That is very kind of you. Freud and I shall be enjoying some sausages this week. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Everybody, again, thanks for joining me. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you again next week. Okay? Take care now. Bye.